Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Spider-Verse Retrospectives. And today we're going to be continuing our discussion on the second Edge of Spider-Verse miniseries as we take a look at Edge of Spider-Verse Volume 2, Number 4. So, what Spideys will we be meeting today? Well, the first story actually reintroduces us to Peter Porker, aka Spider-Ham. And basically, the story centers on him as he's somehow back in the main Marvel Universe. I think that the reason why he's here is because of events that was happening in his universe that basically after his everything with Spider-Verse, he started getting kind of a bloated head, started annoying superheroes, and so when a crisis came that required jumping to the 616 universe, he essentially forced himself in while all the other superheroes tried to stop him. And again, it's a whole thing. I didn't actually read the story. Point is, he's now back in the main he's now back on the main Marvel universe, and his dimensional watch is on the fritz, so he can't just port back to his world, so he's trapped here, and he's now dark and gritty and serious because he saw so many other Spideys getting killed, and now he's darkened his heart, brought out his bad side, and he starts doing things that he may never know how to do, that he would never do before. And so we see an example of his super dark persona now as he hears a woman crying out for help, and as he jumps in ready to fight off the criminals that are hurting her, he grabs one and gives him a noogie with a vengeance. Yeah, you're not supposed to take any of this seriously, and it's very clear from the outset. However, as Spider-Ham is giving his noogie with vengeance, a second player comes into the fray and opens it up by giving a really bad dad joke, which is, I'm sorry, I really want to read this because it's very much a very bad dad joke. The joke is, what do you call a chef's favorite gun? A salt rifle. Yeah, that was a bad pun. And the guy, when this person ends up falling in, he ends up literally falling on one of the criminals, and so Peter Porker asks who the hell this guy is, and it turns out it's another Spider-Man, specifically a slightly overweight Spider-Man whose mask consists of the Spider-Man eye holes, a T-shirt with the Spider-Man design, a fanny pack, khaki shorts, and spider-themed slippers. And his name, Pete Spider-Man. No hyphen, just Pete Spider-Man. And basically, his whole shtick is that in his universe, he got his powers from a radioactive spider bite that was in the seat cushions of his couch, and so of course, learning a lesson from his late Uncle Benji, he learned that with great patio furniture, there must also come great risks for pest bites, and which I don't get. But basically, he pretty much decided to use his newfound spider powers and become the friendly neighborhood web slinger of his suburban neighborhood. Yeah, that's pretty much what it is. And all the supervillains he fights are people who are trying to bring the property value down of his neighborhood so that the place can be bulldozed in place for a mall that Oscorp wants to build. It's actually kind of hilarious in that regard, and we even see even variants of his supervillains are the Green Lawn Goblin or Craven the Home Flipper. Yeah, like with Spider-Ham, we're not supposed to take this guy seriously at all. Although, because Spider-Ham is supposed to be dark and serious, he doesn't think Pete Spider-Man is worthy of being there, and even just kind of yells at him and insults him, thinking that he's not worthy to wear the webs or even be called a Spider-Man. However, as Spider-Ham is chewing out his suburban counterpart, they end up hearing another call for help, and so the two Spideys jump into action and see that there is a lady trapped in a building that's on fire. As such, while Spider-Ham tells Pete to stay back, that he can't handle this sort of thing, well, despite the fact that his situation is a little bit more silly than one would expect, Pete Spider-Man is still a Spider-Man, so he immediately jumps into action and decides to help one of the girls, and decides to help Spider-Ham, evacuate people from the building. And we do see that his bad jokes actually do come in handy, and he's able to tell a very bad joke to a girl, which actually gets a laugh out of her despite her being afraid, which in turn helps her calm down. And when Spider-Ham sees this, he starts to realize, okay, yeah, maybe I'm being too hard on this guy. But either way, the pair of Spideys do what they can and do help out, and once everything is said and done, and they're both just kind of sitting on the edge of a building, having lunch, Spider-Ham does apologize for what he said to Pete earlier, and does say that he does have what it takes to be Spider-Man, especially the corny sense of humor which all Spider-Men need to have. As such, he says he's all right, and so Spider-Ham swings away, happily being reminded that maybe it is okay to let your light side come out, and to not let the dark thoughts take hold. which he has this revelation just as he's attacked by one of Shathra's wasps that manages to sting his leg, and the story ends as we see him starting to become, as we see Spider-Ham starting to become more wasp-like. So yeah, that's a thing. But anyway, the second story is, well, what if Spider-Man was a Disney princess? That's literally what the premise is. In this case, the main character for in this next story is a girl by the name of Princess Petra, whose mother is called Queen Mysteria, and essentially, hold on one second. Sorry about that, but yeah, like I said, the main character is a girl by the name of Princess Petra, and her mother, Queen Mysteria, is a very much a protective mother, as years ago her husband was killed by an assassin from a rival kingdom, and so she desperately wants her daughter to be safe. But alas, Princess Petra yearns to see the outside world, and so one day, in secret, she dons a disguise and goes out into the marketplace, singing about all the fun and adventure she's having alongside her pet spider named Webster. Again, hold on a sec. Again, apologies, it was a dog thing. But yeah, she goes out into the marketplace and has a merry old time, singing a tune about the adventures she's having, and no, I am not going to stop this voice until I get bored, because quite frankly, it is fun to talk like this, especially if they are parodying Disney musicals, and musicals are exactly what happens, as like I said, Princess Petra sings so merrily about all this. And I'm not kidding, the lyrics are literally supposed to be song lyrics, which would be lovely if, we actually had the song that the lyrics are supposed to go to. So, yeah, kind of a crapper. However, as she ventures out into the marketplace, that's when disaster strikes, as this world's version of Doc Ock, called Baron Octopus, ends up attacking the civilians. Specifically, he attacks a bard by the name of Mary James Watson. Yes, you know who it is. And he begins questioning him about a magical orb, which Mary James knows nothing about, so Baron Octopus decides to hurt him, but Princess Petra is not going to let this crazy cephalopod man hurt this random music player, and so she tries fighting back and tells him to get lost. Of course, Baron Octopus gets angry at her and tries to attack her, but in the midst of their tussle, her hood gets thrown off, and he sees it's Princess Petra, resulting in Baron Octopus dropping her and saying that he has no time for this, that he has to find the crystal before the ball that evening, and to cover his escape, he sprays ink on Petra and Mary James. As such, Princess Petra and Mary James are kind of a little grossed out by the ink, Princess Petra realizes that whoever this ne'er-do-well is, they are clearly planning something disastrous at the ball that requires the use of this magic crystal. And so Princess Petra makes her way back to the castle to warn her mother about what's going on, but her mother isn't hearing any of this, as she just sees Princess Petra and, well, doesn't exactly like what's happened with her. As for one thing, she thinks that her going out at all was a bad idea, since of course she heard about the thing with Baron Octopus and thinks that she could have gotten hurt, and two, she does not look presentable in the ball at all, as her gown got covered in the octopus ink, so it's now unwearable, especially since all of her other gowns are in the shop. Her hair is a mess. Put simply, she is not fit to be showing up to the ball, and so Queen Mysteria talks about how she loves her daughter and wants to keep her safe before she brings her to her room and locks her in, telling her that it's for her own safety. As such, Princess Petra just bemoans and whines, and even confesses to her pet spider Webster that she wishes to be like him, and she should be able to go out the window and swing away, and yada yada yada. And so, as she laments this fact, suddenly her prayers are answered, as in a puff of smoke, a green goblin appears. Specifically, Norma, Petra's fairy godmother. But yeah. So yeah, either way, Norma, as she's called, says that she can answer Princess Petra's prayers and help her get to the ball and actually go there in one piece. In fact, she'll even grant her wish about being like Webster, having spider powers and all that stuff. Though she warns Princess Petra that if that by midnight, if she chooses to keep her spider powers, then she'll be giving up the chance for love, which Petra's not okay with. But at the same time, she's aware that there's going to be a major plot going down at the ball, and on top of that, she just wants to go. So she does still accept the deal. However, Norma does tell Petra that she's only giving her the deal on one condition. You see, the crystal orb that Baron Octopus wanted earlier in the story, well, it actually belongs to Norma, and she wants Princess Petra to bring it back to her. So it's essentially a dual purpose thing. And so as such, after they look over the details of the contract, everything they need to get to it, including an actually funny line where they talk about how there's no way they can retcon any of this out via the typical Spider-Man retcons, like deals with demons, magical memory lapses, or whatever, eventually Norma grants Petra's wish and transforms and gives her a lovely new ball gown and spider powers to go with it. And so Petra is able to get out of her tower and is able to attend the ball under the guise of the Spinstress. And of course, nobody recognizes her, despite the fact that literally her only disguise is a new dress and what looks like a mask looks like a mask over her eyes that look like the typical Spider-Man teardrop eyes. And so she ends up encountering Mary James there. But before she can look around and see what the big problem is, Queen Mysteria ends up addressing the crowd, because a good chunk of the guests are people from the other 6 kingdoms. And put simply, she's there to pretty much tell them that they all suck, because she's aware that it was one of their assassins that killed her husband many years ago. Of course, everyone denies it, with the leader of one kingdom, who I swear is meant to be an alternate Doctor Strange, but don't quote me on that, telling her that it wasn't them that did it, it was the Queen herself and her experiments into dark magic. Of course, Queen Mysteria isn't hearing any of this, and from the shadows, we soon see her compatriot, Baron Octopus. Yep, it turns out that Baron Octopus was working for her, and the crystal orb that he was asking everyone about, he wanted to get it on her behalf. And it turns out since the last time we saw the good Baron Octopus, he actually got the crystal orb, which he hands over to Queen Mysteria, which she puts on her head. And yeah, if you couldn't tell that she was supposed to be this world's version of Mysterio, then, well, here's your answer, because she slaps the thing on, and with the way it looks on her head combined with her green gown and the thing for her cable like an eye, yeah, she looks a lot more like Mysterio. Only now she calls herself, again, I've got to find this, she calls herself the Mysterious Empress, and so she wants to unleash her magics on the ball. As such, Spinstress, not exactly happy that her mother is behind all this, tries to talk her down, as she immediately starts going on the offensive and using her new spider powers and, kicking all kinds of ass. And while at first Mysteria doesn't recognize this woman. In fact, she actually scratched that. She doesn't recognize Spinstress as her daughter at all, and it's actually at this point when she puts the crystal orb on her head and gets its magic powers. But yeah, she's not listening to Spinstress at all, and even mistakes Spinstress as an assassin sent by the 6 kingdoms to kill her and all that crap. As such, Baron Octopus begins attacking all the people in the... As such, Baron Octopus begins attacking everyone in the party, but Spinstress thankfully is able to get Webster, who she can now talk to thanks to her newfound magical spider powers, to help get the guests all out of the ball. In the meantime, Spinstress keeps trying to duke it out with her mother, starts fighting her, and while Mysteria is not listening and even manages to blast her into a wall, breaking the gown part of her dress. Eventually she does realize she has to go on the offensive, and if she wants to heal her mother, then she needs to take out that orb. Though sadly that's easier said than done. Again, I need to look into this some more because I want to be sure I get all the details right here, because I've been known to screw things up in the past. Spinstress rips off the bottom part of her dress, showing that she is wearing tights underneath. Before she can actually attack her mom, Baron Octopus ends up grabbing her in one of his tentacles and tries to crush her. Thankfully, Mary James arrives and manages to knock Baron Octopus out with his lyre. But before Spinstress can capitalize on this fact, well, midnight comes around, and well, she doesn't have the crystal orb yet, and her mother is still a psychopath. So she has to kind of decide: should she try to help her mother as Princess Petra or as the Spinstress? Ultimately, she makes her call, and so as the final dongs of the bell keep going, Spinstress is able to grab one of Baron Octopus's tentacles and she sprays her mother with ink. And so as her mother is distracted by this, it allows her to go in for the kill, so to speak, as she jumps at her mother and delivers a punch right at her crystal orbed face, destroying the crystal and knocking her mother out. As such, as the 12th bong goes off, hold on one second. Sorry about that. But yeah, as the 12th bong goes off and the supervillains are defeated, Spinstress quickly realizes that, well, she's kind of damned herself now. As yes, she now has spider powers, but she's now ensured that she'll never find love. And so, as such, she brings Mary James up to a bell tower, and she does kind of talk to him about who she is and about how she's Spinstress and how she'll have to keep fighting her mother if she's still corrupted, and that she may never find love. While Mary Jane thinks, well, why can't you find love? And she's about to give him an explanation. Well, the story ends, the portal opens up, and, well, that's when Madam Web, Spider-UK, and Aranya show up and are ready to recruit Spinstress to their spider army. So, there you go. But anyway, with that out of the way, let's move on to the third story. This one about the spectacular Spider-Mobile. You remember him? He was the talking car Spider-Man? Yeah, we're gonna get a story with him. And it turns out his secret identity is Peter Parked Car. And in his world, everyone's a car. I'm not kidding. Literally everyone in his universe is a talking car. And what's going on is that all the cars around Manhattan are, well, essentially running to the bank to get out all their oil reserves. Why? Because the fabled great driver is here, and that he requires them to give all of their oil to him, and that once he has it all, he will drive them all, since they were made for someone like him. That's why they have seatbelts. That's why they have foot pedals. It's so that they can actually be driven by this man. Of course, Peter Parked Car thinks this is stupid, but everyone seems to claim it's truth, so he goes to see what the commotion is, and he sees that the great driver, as it's called, is the, you know how there's that crosswalk sign that has the stop with the hand sign and then go with someone walking? Yeah, the go sign is that guy that's walking is the great driver. And basically, he's telling everyone that soon, that they can, if as long as they hand them over, he'll drive them along the one true highway and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, Peter Parked Car smells crap a mile away, especially when his spider sensors, as he calls them, alert him that there's danger. As such, he drives to the side of a building and then reformats himself into the spectacular Spider-Mobile just so he can expose his fake for the fraud that he is. As such, as the great driver has his minions take all the oil and says that he'll come back for the rest of them, that's when the Spider-Mobile shows up, sticking to the side of a building, and flashes his high beams on this guy. And while the great driver claims that this won't do anything, well, it turns out that this is actually a double-edged sword for this. Plus, also the great driver did throw an attack, which Peter Parker got around. Again, I am kind of skipping over some stuff. I apologize, but yeah, it turns out that the high beams that he shoot. The high beams contain a spider signal, which is actually supposed to disrupt an illusion. Why? Because, yeah, the great driver is actually just another car. Specifically a car variant of one of Spidey's villains. Specifically, Mysterio. Yeah, 2 stories where Mysterio is the bad guy in a row. Go figure. Only in this world, he's called Mr. Rio Speedwagon. And yes, I'm aware that's supposed to be a play on REO Speedwagon. Whatever. My point is, he's the master of illusions, and he basically just put up the great driver front so he could rob everyone of all their oil. And so when everyone realized they've been had, they run Mr. REO Speedwagon out of New York, and Peter Parked Car's Aunt Teague, and thanks to Spider-Mobile for his help. He goes away feeling proud of himself, but once he gets on top of a building, that's when a portal opens up, and from it comes Spider-UK wanting the Spider-Mobile to come with them. Well, he first tells her to get lost because he just went through all the trouble of convincing everyone there was no great driver. Well, once he hears the Spider-Verse is in danger, he's like, oh, well, in that case, sign me up. And so the story ends as they both go back to the portal to, fight whatever the fight is. So there you go. But that finally leads us to the last story of the comic, and one that's, well, I'm just going to say my opinion on it may be controversial, but I will say this, I am at least glad it exists for one reason and one reason only. So remember back when I looked at the last Spider-Verse miniseries with Miles Morales jumping between universes? Remember how I mentioned at the end of every one of the issues there were a handful of fan-submitted Spider-Sonas that were there? Well, just as one of those spider sonas is the main focus of this story. Now, it was already cool, in my opinion, to have those spider sonas actually take part in the climax of the last Spider-Verse miniseries, because, it allows fans to kind of get on the action and help secure that these Spideys are canon to the greater Spider-Verse, as it's called. So, to actually have... Sorry, digesting food. To actually have one of these Spideys be not only continue to be focused on, but have a story where they're in a starring role, I think it's really damn cool. And, well, of course, the question is raised, which Spidey is it? Specifically, it's Sun Spider, the paraplegic spider person who basically uses crutches as web slingers. And so the story focuses on her and what's going on with her. And the story itself is that it's prom night at her high school. And basically, Sun Spider is having fun to go. And yeah, I think I might have mentioned who her secret identity was before. Yeah, it's Charlotte Weber. And basically Charlotte is happy to go to the prom because there's a specific girl that she wants to ask to dance with. Specifically, a girl named Aster, who's in her friend group, though she hasn't really worked up the nerve to talk to her, and so she thinks prom night might be a perfect time for that. And so after her friends help her up the stairs and get her wheelchair all ready, they all go to the prom and are just having a good time. One of her friends encourages Charlotte, or Charlie as her name, or Charlie as they call her, to go and talk with Aster because she can tell that she wants to dance with her. And so, gathering the courage, Charlie decides to work up the nerve to go talk to Aster. Before she gets the chance, she gets rudely interrupted by the introduction of our villain for this story, specifically Otto Octavius, who in this reality is actually one of her fellow high schoolers. And in this reality, he didn't develop the legs as a means to help with his experiments, and they're not fused to him because of an accident. No, in reality, he developed the legs to help Charlie since she's paraplegic. Okay, and of course he's here at the party and he's here at the prom because he wants to ask her to dance with him, even giving her a corsage, and once again offering her the tentacles, thinking that they might be able to help her move around. Of course, Charlie doesn't exactly like that, and the way he's talking does kind of get to her a little, and so she tells him to piss off, she's not interested. And as a result, Otto throws a temper tantrum right there in the middle of the prom as he uses his tentacles to just start ripping the place apart because he's a baby in a teenage boy's body. Although you could argue that's any teenage boy. But either way, I'm sorry, I'm just kind of looking this up because there's one thing I do want to take care of. As such, as everything's going to hell, immediately a weird mist starts filling the crowd, and the reason for this mist is because another one of the high schoolers is also a superhero, specifically a superhero called Histamina, whose gimmick is that I think she has, like, maybe gas powers or some kind of power, but I don't know what her powers are. I don't even know anything about Histamina. Let me see, this is who Histamina is. This girl with the blonde hair and the pink outfit. I don't really know what her deal is. And she has, the Big Dipper on her chest? I don't know what her story is. Point is, the gas lot gives Histamina a chance to run for cover and get changed into her superhero jammies, but it also works to Charlie's benefit as well, as she manages to run aside and switch into her Sun Spider outfit. And so as teenage Doc Ock is destroying the prom, Sun Spider comes in and starts kicking his ass, with Histamina getting all the people everybody out of the prom as quickly as possible. As such, Doc Ock ends up taking the fight outside, and yes, he does end up calling himself Doc Ock, which even Charlie's like, dude, you haven't even graduated high school yet. She keeps calling him a squid, which even says, why don't you call yourself Senior Squid? That sounds better, which... yeah, it is better. It is a better nickname. But ultimately, Otto isn't taking any of that shit as he keeps trying to fight her and hit her with one more of his tentacles. However, outside the building, Charlie has a bit of an idea, as she looks to the ground and she sees a manhole, and so using her hyperdexterity and her cane web shooter, she's able to pull up the manhole and secure herself down very quickly. As such, Doc Ock tries going around and wants to see where the spider person is so he can kick her ass and then fierce, until she launches herself right out of the manhole and manages to use it to knock Otto aside, pretty much securing a victory. It's actually pretty badass, and I dig it. But of course, as such, with Otto on the ground, the police come, they manage to take away his tentacles, and they reprimand him for what he did because, well, it was childish, until they realize something. Where's Charlie? Yeah, apparently no one kept track of Charlie and nobody knows where she is. And so they realize, oh shit, was Charlie still in there? We gotta go find her. And so everyone runs back inside, and it's at this point that Charlie comes back in and is back in her wheelchair, no longer in Spidey jammies. But she begins reprimanding the head of the school for not having wheelchair accessibility and for how nobody saw her and how she could have died and all that crap. Which I have my thoughts on this, which I'll get to. But either way, yeah, the head of the school apologizes for this and all that, and so Charlie decides to try and take this opportunity to, even if the prom is wrecked, she still wants to get a dance with Aster, which she asks her, and Aster says she will, and Charlie says, great, but first let me fix my not waterproof mascara. And so she goes into the bathroom with Aster saying that she'll wait for her. And so while Charlie laments that the whole day was kind of ruined because of all this, well, before she can go outside and have her dance, that's when Madam Web and I think Aranya show up, or Spider UK. I think it's Spider UK. Spider UK. Let me confirm again. I'm sorry I keep looking back at this book, but there are more little details that I want to make sure I get right. Yeah, it's Spider UK. Madam Web and Spider UK show up and say they've been watching her all day and they have a job for her. And have a job for her concerning the Spider-Verse. And so Charlie's like, oh shit, not again. I guess I'm not getting that dance, then am I? And so, yeah, that's where that story ends. So, alright, my thoughts on these stories. First, the Spider-Ham story. And, yeah, it's actually a pretty good story. It's, of course, like I said, you're not supposed to take this one too seriously. After all, it's Spider-Ham trying to go grimdark. There is no way in hell that you can take that seriously. And the comic is fully aware of that from the outset, as it opens up with him doing an inner monologue, talking about how he's seen too many of his friends die, and how he's dark now, and he does things he never thought he would do, and one of the worst things he does is give a guy a noogie. Like, it's kind of mean, but that's kind of tame in comparison to what you could have done, considering your power set, my man. It's just there to kind of be a joke. It's just kind of there to be a joke. Not helped by the fact that he teams up with another alternate Spider-Man who, at his core, is also a joke character, which, yeah, they don't explain how Pete Spider-Man got to the main Marvel Universe. He says that one day he was just kind of having a drink on his patio, minding his own business, when suddenly reality got wonky and he wound up in the main Marvel Universe, so they don't really explain what's going on. It's maybe implied that it's kind of like a side effect of what's going on with Shathra, but I don't know for certain. But whatever. But I don't know for certain. But either way, I do kind of like that. It is meant to again, the story is clearly there just to be a joke. But in a way, it does still kind of have an arc to it. Specifically, Spider-Ham while they don't take Spider-Ham being serious, seriously, ultimately, what makes the story, in my opinion, actually enjoyable is the fact that Spider-Ham does kind of go through an arc and does realize that maybe it is okay to be a little lighter. Especially since while he immediately wrote Pete Spider-Man off because he thought that he was just a joke, and that he would get himself killed, well, all it took was them going into a crisis and helping, that he was able to see the good in him. And yes, well, the premise of Pete Spider-Man's gimmick and even his world are kind of silly and stupid and don't make any sense. At the end of by that same token, he also represents what any good Spider-Man should. He cares about people. He helps them out. And yes, while he may tell corny jokes, the corny jokes actually help alleviate a lot of serious situations. And we see that immediately as while he and Spider-Ham are trying to help with the burning building, Pete goes in and helps a girl that's scared, and one of his corny, dumb jokes actually manages to get a little giggle out of her and help alleviate some of the fear that she's feeling from being in this building. Again, it's nice, and it helps showcase that, yeah, while this guy is kind of dumb, he's still a Spider-Man, and while the situations he may be dealing with are a little sillier than you would expect, he does know the stakes and does know what he needs to do to help out. So again, it's a nice stuff, and I do like how by the end of it, even Spider-Ham is like, okay, maybe it is okay to let your lights to kind of be a little bit more fun and silly. It's again, I dig that. It's a nice little arc, and by the end, well, when Spider-Ham does apologize to Pete Spider-Man about what he did, about what his initial opinions on him, it does actually feel earned. Again, story is still silly and dumb, but that silly and dumbness kind of works to its advantage to actually give us a pretty nice arc with Spider-Ham. So I dig that. Plus, Pete Pete Spider-Man is actually kind of silly and cool. Like, he's clear, like, he was written to be a dumbass Spider-Man, but again, he kind of wins brownie points by showcasing again that despite his silliness, he's still he's still a Spidey, and he still knows the job well. So again, good stuff. So overall, first story, silly, stupid, but overall enjoyable. But then of course you get to the Spinstress story, and it's another kind of example of that. This one is a little bit harder to take seriously compared to a lot of other Spider-Man stories, because at its core, like I said, the premise of it is that it's the tale of Spider-Man if Spider-Man was a Disney princess. And it comes with all the trappings of being a Disney princess. Breaking out into song, longing for freedom from being caged like a songbird, having a fairy godmother, from fighting an evil witch and all that crap. It has all the trappings of a Disney's princess fairy tale, but but the downside of telling the story like this is that, well, a lot of the serious moments don't exactly work. Now, and when it gets to the parody stuff, it can be legitimately enjoyable. Like when Nora, the fairy godmother, showed up. That was just kind of silly and dumb. And of course, if Norma is this world's version of the Green Goblin, then she probably has an ulterior motive for helping Petra. Like, there is no Green Goblin in the multiverse who does what they does because they feel remorseful. Well, maybe a handful, but the majority of them are assholes in every sense of the word. So odds are Norma has her own plans for Petra being the spinstress that we don't know about. But ultimately, what holds the story back, in my opinion, is, believe it or not, when they try and dip a little too far into the Disney princess side of things. Namely, when people break out in song. And like I said, because this is a comic, we don't have a song. We get the lyrics to the song, and we know it's a song because of how they're written, and we see musical notes around them. But unless this comic didn't come with a CD, so I have no idea what the hell they're singing. And as a result, what's supposed to be kind of a parody of these things is kind of annoying when they're singing when they're singing like throughout the majority of the story, which, yeah, that gets annoying pretty quickly. And as a result, while the premise for the story alone is kind of enjoyable, and it does have fun with it in many regards, especially seeing the spinstress rip off the gown portion of her dress and start kicking ass with more freedom, at the same time, it does have stuff that I think holds it back. It's not an awful story by any means. It is enjoyable in its own right, and is still definitely a lot of fun, and does kind of just kind of play around with the premise. I do it, like I said, while it is again, it is actually kind of cool to see all these different to see this world's variants of other Spidey villains, like having the Queen of this world be the variant of Mysterio, seeing Baron Octopus, even the Fairy Godmother. It does give each of the characters creative roles, especially with having Princess Petra's love interest be a traveling musician by the name of Mary James Watson, which, yeah, I'll give you credit. That's actually pretty funny. But again, it's not that the story itself is bad. It's enjoyable and it has fun with the premise. It's just that, believe it or not, the singing kind of holds it back, in my opinion. It doesn't ruin the story, but it does get annoying with how prevalent it is and how how it goes out. Again, not bad. I do admit, Spinstress is a cool variant of the web slinger. Like, here's her in her dress, which does look nice and sparkly, containing enough of the Spider-Man elements that I think it works on its own. But then she gets rid of the gown part, and she does look a lot more ready to kick ass. So again, looks good. Again, it looks cool, and again, interesting premise. It's just that there are just that aspects of the story do kind of hold it back, in my opinion. So there you go. As for the Spider-Mobile story, this one it's just stupid, but it's silly. But like the first story, it knows it's stupid. It's a story about a world where everyone is a car. That cannot be taken seriously, and the car puns and jokes are in abundance throughout the story, especially when they treat it like it's like it's one of the early Spider-Man stories with Peter parked car and how he's got to slip away and reformat himself into the Spider-Mobile. And Again, having the villain be Mr. REO Speedwagon, because with him being a variant of Mysterio, and how he wants to steal the oil of all the cars and all that crap, which I guess oil is currency in this world. Go figure. It's silly, it's dumb, kind of stupid, but I feel like it has to be. You need to look at this and, like, if you try and take that story seriously, I just don't think you're gonna have a fun time. It's dumb, it's over the top, but quite frankly, I think if you accept it for what it is, I think you can just kind of laugh at the absurdity of it. So there you go. The Spider-Mobile story gets some thumbs up from me. However, this is where we get to where I said things would get controversial, as the final story in here is the one focusing on Sun Spider. And I want to make something perfectly clear. I like Sun Spider. I think Sun Spider is a unique idea, and like I said, the fact that a fan submitted Spider Sona is actually being featured predominantly in the Spider-Verse, to the point where she actually has a story where she's the frontliner, I think is cool. And I would love to see more of that from the books. I would love to see more of the other Spider Sonas get worked in there. See how they're able to work with their premises, create a unique world, show how their stories go. I would love to see all that. And again, to Charlie's benefit, when she's kicking ass as Sun Spider, she does a really damn good job. When she's duking it out with Otto Octavius, it feels like I'm reading about a Spider-Man, about another Spidey in the multiverse, because she kicks ass, is very adept at using her powers, is able to use her hyper flexibility to her advantage in battle, and she even quips at the best of them. Her banter with Doc Ock when they're fighting is very much on point and feels like what a good Spider-Man banter should be. So, like, even when she's mocking Doc Ock and he says, "Fear the might of Doc Ock," she's like, "Dude, you haven't even graduated high school yet. How about Senior Squid? That would sound better." Like, she's just mocking him, and it pisses him off, but she's clearly having fun with him. It's great. I love it, and it works to her advantage and does show her kicking ass. And I think in that regard, she's a good representation of a paraplegic superhero, because again, despite her disabilities, she's kicking ass with the best of them and showing just how awesome she is. The problem with the story for me, though, is that while the Sun Spider section is awesome, the Charlie section, let me put it this way. One of the things that Charlie's story kind of addresses with being a paraplegic is how most people don't see her as a person, but rather as her condition, as the sick kid, as the paraplegic, and that everybody feels like they have to baby her and help her out, and even at one point when her friends are helping her, she says, "I appreciate what you guys are trying to do for me," especially since they were trying to get a ramp built in the school, but she tells them that, but it's okay, if I wanted help I'd ask for it, otherwise I'm fine. Like that, the thing is, the story treats Charlie the way that Charlie says other people treat her. And I think that's a problem. Because throughout all of throughout all the Charlie sections of the story, the thing that's called more emphasis to is the fact that she is a paraplegic. We're not really, again, Sun Spider was created to be a representative for paraplegics, as she's a paraplegic superhero. And like I said, as Sun Spider, she kicks ass. I would love to see more stuff with her, believe it or not. But the thing is, if we do see more stuff with her, there is one thing that we need that sadly the story does not provide: a character. And that is where the story is held back by the fact that they pay more attention to Charlie's status as a paraplegic than as Charlie Weber. Because, well, that is what the story is. The majority of her time in the book is meant kind of pointing out the issues that come from being a paraplegic, what life is like as a paraplegic, what she does as a paraplegic. And as a result, rather than feeling like a story about this girl who deals with this part of her life as well as her Spidey duties, it feels more like it's a mouthpiece for these issues. And to be fair, And to be fair, the things they talk about are not bad things, because some of these things are things you need to know. Like, if someone is paraplegic, there's nothing wrong with wanting to help someone who's paraplegic, but the thing is, they're still people, and if they want help, they'll ask for it, which I know is ironic considering that I'm complaining about about aspects of the story, even though Sunspider is supposed to be a representation of that. So feel free to blast me in the comments. I probably deserve it. But my point is this: the majority of the story focuses exclusively on the difficulties of being a paraplegic. And I do mean exclusively, to the point where Charlie's character is kind of ignored. The beginning of this, which, to be again, being a paraplegic is part of her character, and it should be touched on and discussed or brought up, because if you show these issues as a part of her everyday life, you can call more attention to them and use that as a baseline to kind of help improve things for people that need it. But the problem is that those issues are the only thing they talk about. Like, for example, when Charlie, at the beginning of the story, when Charlie is done web slinging as Sunspider and goes back to Midtown High and goes back and switches out of her Spidey jammies, she monologues to herself about her condition as a paraplegic and how her legs don't work, and how if she could, she'd love to be Sunspider all the time, but she gets more exhausted and tired more easily because she still lives in constant pain because of her condition, though it does come with benefits because it does allow her some more hyper flexibility, which we saw her use in her battle with Doc Ock later in the story. But then after that, we immediately direct our attention to another issue as her friends are helping her up the stairs. They talk about, man, it sucks that this place doesn't have a ramp yet. We should really do something about that. And then Charlie's like, oh, it's like, hey, I appreciate it, but if I need help, I'll ask for it. Otherwise, I'll be fine. They're like, oh, I'm sorry, Charlie. We didn't mean to do anything wrong by that. And then after that, they go to the prom, and while it looks like we might get some more character with Charlie as she wants to go ask her friend, hold on one second. Sorry, blanked on the name. As she wants to go ask her friend Aster to dance, as she has a crush on her. Again, immediately we get to we're immediately thrown more of the issues in the face as Otto Octavius comes up and once again tries talking about how, oh, I can help you by giving you these arms, and she says no, because it again is one of those things where where she wants help, she'd ask for it, and Otto is just trying to push his robotic legs on her, which we just talked about this sort of thing, and we see him acting like a spoiled rotten brat because she said no to him, which again leads to kick-ass superheroics. But then immediately after, we once again get back to the mouthpiece thing, because they suddenly say, oh, did anyone see Charlie come out? Oh, where is she? And how nobody noticed her leave the party, to which I respond with, one of your students attacked the prom with giant robotic legs. I feel like that who got out of the school would not be a priority. You wouldn't be keeping track of every single kid that got out. Of course, you'd want to know who it is and who's safe, but the fact that they call special attention to Charlie bugs me. And the thing is, Charlie could have very easily said that she got out with everyone else, that there was some issues, but she got out, which I think that would have been a better way of showcasing about the whole issue with the ramp thing. Like, she could have said, I got out, but I got scuffed up because it was hard for me to get down the stairs, to which the guy would say, I'm sure you're safe and I'm sorry, but instead she goes back into the school and says, I managed to get out, but I couldn't get out because everyone forgot about me, and there are those stairs there, and because there's no ramp for me to get out, I could have been stuck in here, which that just feels like a slap in the face. Like, I understand they're trying to raise awareness for these issues, but I feel like there are better ways they could have done it rather than trying to shove all these things in your face. And I'm not saying these things should not be discussed. They should be discussed. They should be talked about. But there are better ways to talk about them rather than forcing the issues down your throat. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe every single take I'm giving here is wrong. I could be talking out of my ass and I could be a horrible person, which, if I am, call me out, please. That's the only way that I can learn. That's the only way that I can better myself and learn from my mistakes and make sure I don't repeat them. But the thing is, because the story focuses so much on Charlie as a paraplegic, it sacrifices a very important aspect of her that should be kind of center stage. her character. And as a result, the story itself kind of suffers from the exact same problem that Charlie had with all the other students of her school. It sees her more as her ailment than as a person, and that's a problem in my opinion, because I want to know more about Charlie. I would love to see more about her life. Maybe actually show her at the dance talking to Aster, them chatting it up, see what she likes about Aster, what makes them click as friends, and why Charlie would want something more than that. Maybe we could actually get into more of why Charlie does what she does as Sun Spider. Maybe talk about then maybe we could actually talk about what Charlie's life is like with her ailment and how she lives through it and how it makes her feel brave and how her friend maybe admires her because she thinks she's brave for that. There are so many ways they could have integrated this into the story without having it be the primary focus. And as a result, the Charlie sections of the Sun Spider story just, I feel, don't work. Again, if I'm wrong about this, if this is me being a bigoted asshole, please call me out. It's the only way I'll learn. I will not learn if I just keep living in ignorance. But with how I'm looking at the story, it feels like they're sacrificing character for the sake of having the story act as a breadbox to stand upon and talk and kind of shout out these issues. And like I said, it's better for people to understand how someone that's paraplegic lives, so they can better accommodate them without having to center their life around being a paraplegic. But with that said, the way the story handles it kind of instead makes Charlie has the main focus with Charlie be her ailment rather than her character. And as a result, I have to sadly say, I think this first outing with Sun Spider as a main character just kind of falls flat. And again, when she's Sun Spider, she kicks ass. When she's running around, when she's fighting Doc Ock, she very much works as a spider person because see how clever she is. You see how she can maneuver. We can see her experience as a superhero, and it works. It really works well. It gives you a clear window of who she is and how she operates in there. It's just that I wish we could have spent more time actually showcasing Charlie as a character rather than trying to call more attention to the fact that she's paraplegic, which, again, we kind of already have that at the forefront. She is paraplegic. We know she's paraplegic. Show that more naturally in her everyday life and the issues she struggles with, rather than just trying to make that the forefront of your story. I'm sorry. I'm getting too angry about this. I really shouldn't be. It really shouldn't be. It's just that I hate the fact that they had to sacrifice Charlie's character for the sake of focusing more on her as a paraplegic, which, like I said, we already know that she's a paraplegic. Show us how that works. Show us how she deals with that in her everyday life, how it affects her character. What is her character in everyday life? What does she do and all that stuff? I feel like that would have been better handled. It's just that because they put her ailment as the primary focus of the story, it sacrifices what should have been them. It sacrifices Charlie's character, and as a result, the story suffers. Again, call me out, please. If this is bad, call me out. But like I said, while the Sun Spider sections of her story are awesome, I feel like that she could have had a better first outing. So, sorry, I really am. Like I said, I do like Sun Spider, and I think that she does work well as a good representation of a paraplegic superhero. Because she does have other appearances in other stories, especially in this End of the Spider-Verse, which we'll be looking at soon. But at least in those stories, she actually kicks ass. At least in those stories, she actually showcases what she's good at, and we see her working off other characters. Hell, in her cameo in Across the Spider-Verse, she's made even more awesome because she's given a giant wheelchair with spider legs. That's awesome. Look at it. Look it up. Her cameo is awesome. It kicks ass. And what I love is that she goes in and she talks to Miles. It's like, hey, I'm a big fan. Hey, listen. Do you think most spider people use humor as a crutch? Get it? Crutch. Again, that's funny. It's funny. It's Spidey. And it calls attention. And it calls attention to her. And I like it. It works well. And I'm sorry. It annoys me that this is how bad this first outing is, in my opinion. Like, again, I'm sorry. I'm just ranting at this point. Point is, Sun Spider section of the story enjoyable, but when it actually tries focusing on Charlie as a character, it just kind of starts committing the same cardinal sin that it's trying to bring awareness to, and as a result, it doesn't exactly do a good job it doesn't really do a good job at ingratiating Charlie to the audience. So yeah, that's really all I have to say. Again, I'm sorry if I said anything that sounds bigoted or angry or offensive or is non-inclusive. My point is, yeah, overall, but the issue itself, on the whole, though, is is still enjoyable. The Spider Ham story is just kind of fun and silly and dumb, and just kind of has fun with that, while actually having a good arc with Spider Ham. The Spinster story is an interesting premise and actually is a good story that's kind of hampered by all the music and all this stuff. Peter Parker, the Spider-Mobile story is incredibly dumb, but it's kind of but that's exactly what it wants to be, so I'm guessing it works. And the Sun Spider story, well, like I said, the Sun Spider section of the story is kick ass, and the fact that she even has a story where she's the primary focus is awesome. I just wish that the actual story itself, focusing on Charlie, actually focused more on Charlie as a character rather than continually calling attention to her status as a paraplegic, which I think instead of actually bringing awareness to it, actually makes Charlie herself as a character be thrown more into the background and have her ailment be the primary focus, which I think is a problem. Which again, like I said, her ailment should be a part of her character. It just shouldn't be her whole character, is what I'm saying. So there you go. But yeah, call me out in the comments. I probably deserve it, but either way, I hope you at least have a good evening. I'm Samuel Johnson, and hopefully when we come back on Thursday, I'll have less controversial opinions. So till then, I hope you have a good night and take care.